Hi, welcome back to Gifts of Intuition. I'm Melissa. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I have a topic that I want to talk about today that I feel is super important, very relevant to a lot of things that are happening in the news and things that I have been, patterns I've been noticing within my own practice, my own clients, and it's really motivated me to speak on this and create an opportunity to, just express my concern here and really point out some work that we need to do. Ladies, we've got work to do. So what I'm talking about today is women versus women. Women versus women. And so what that means is when women uphold the very systems that silence us, other women, we have a big problem. And not to say that I believe that everything that comes out of a woman's mouth is pure fact and women don't lie. Women lie, people lie. People fabricate, people exaggerate, yes. But I just don't think that we are being taken seriously enough. And the more and more that I'm hearing, not that I haven't experienced it myself, because I have, but the more and more I hear of women being discounted by other women, it's really disheartening and it's really breaking many women that I know of. And I want to take space to make sure that we are talking about this and maybe even doing some self-reflection and inviting the opportunity to do better. And I'm included in that. As a mental health professional, I'm not going to claim that I'm perfect at this. Have I done this? Probably. That will take some reflection on my part. But what I can do is make sure that I don't do it any longer. Not intentionally, my gosh. So grab your beverage and your scented candle if you need one. Let's get ready to touch grass because we need to get down to it. So I got my notes ready. All right. So this begins kind of with me sort of opening and saying to you as a woman, have you ever chosen a professional of some kind because she was a woman? A doctor, because I feel more comfortable with a female doctor. A therapist, because I feel more comfortable with a female therapist. An attorney, because I felt more comfortable with a female attorney. Massage therapist, whatever it is. Like, have you chosen a professional to serve a purpose in your life because first and foremost, she's a woman? And if so, was that because your understanding was, or your hope was, that she will understand me better because she's a woman? She will listen better because she's a woman. She will understand what to do next as a woman. She will listen to me better than a man will. I know I have. And I know I used to be a massage therapist and I worked on many women. And the first criteria was that I was a woman, made them feel comfortable. As a therapist, same thing. A lot of women therapists choose to work with me for a variety of reasons, but for many of them, that first criteria is the fact that I'm a woman. credentials next. Because there is an inherent comfort and safety in other women that many of us feel, because if you've ever been harmed in any way by a man, if you've ever even just heard of a woman being harmed by a man, which we all have, it's enough to just make you, well, just to be on the safe side, let me choose a woman. Well, I want to talk about how that's how it should be. We should all be a safe space for each other, but we're not. So we may go to another woman, a doctor, let's say, and talk about how something doesn't feel right, or maybe if you're pregnant, just I have a bad feeling with the baby, or I need extra reassurance, or if it's a legal matter, going to the woman attorney and saying, this abuse happened to me, or I don't know, or even a boss, a female boss, and say, like I'm, maybe experiencing harassment in the workplace, or even a female HR representative, which I've shared my thoughts on HR in the past, but a female HR representative, I'm experiencing harassment maybe from my boss, or I'm trying to file for maternity leave or get it extended, or I need to take some kind of medical leave other than that, but whatever it is. And thinking by talking to these women, I can explain to them what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, what my struggles are, and they will hold that space and ask the right questions, and they will see me and hear me on just that surface basis of woman to woman. And even still getting responses like, maybe you're just anxious. Maybe you just need to get back to work and, I don't know, face your fears. I don't know. Or hearing that's normal, which sounds like reassurance, but like when you know something's not normal or quite right, to be told, oh, that's normal. It's very minimizing. It's just shutting a person down, saying, oh, don't trust your intuition. You don't know. I know because I'm the professional. And it's like, women, shut up and listen to each other. Just listen. Be curious. Let's not shut each other down. We expect this of men, unfortunately, and I say it again, not all men, but often men, okay? But we need to do better amongst ourselves. Going to a doctor and saying, like, I don't feel well, and so, okay, let's run some labs. The labs are normal. Okay, so it must be in your head. A lot of the times, lab work does not show things that are a problem until they're severe. Labs don't detect things always early on. But many of us can be made to feel crazy because, well, your labs look good. So get a therapist, Get on this antidepressant because you're clearly depressed. And that's not knocking antidepressants. They're great and all, but like, listen. Or hearing, oh, you're overthinking it. Or maybe you just have a low pain tolerance. Or like, maybe they didn't mean it that way. Maybe your husband didn't mean it that way. Like advocating for the other person when we go to someone, whether it's a therapist or attorney or whatever, like maybe they didn't mean it that way. And it hurts more when it comes from another woman. Because that initial level of like, I'm going to be safe here is just shattered. And now we're into, well, shoot, no one's going to believe me. If a woman's not going to believe me, a man might believe, but it's just not as likely. So we need to be careful that we are showing up for each other. So I know this is a really uncomfortable topic, and it may sound like man-hating, but it's not. It really isn't. There are so many wonderful men out there. There really, really are. I'm looking at us, women. I am looking at us. We are not without fault. We are a part of a system that is not designed for us. And a lot of the times, our role within these systems and our fatigue and our burnout and our lack of patience and our need to move on to the next can really shut off our own intuition and our ability to show up for each other, other women. And we are reinforcing that system the more we become part of it, rather than trying to be different in the system. We need to be different. So when there's a steady stream, a steady current of move on, next, we need to stop and just let the water hit us, so to speak, and ask our questions and be curious and ready to support however we can. That doesn't mean we always have the answers, or we know the right diagnosis, or we know what this person should do. But a lot can come from listening and being curious and saying, I don't know, but I'm going to help you figure this out. I don't know, but here's a specialist who might know better. I don't know, but I'm going to look into this for you. Something like that, rather than, it's normal, it's nothing. Because you're basically calling people crazy when you're shutting down their experience. And honestly, we do expect this from many men. We should not be expecting this from each other. We shouldn't expect it from men, but again, we live in a system that's not really made for us. So we need to be the difference in it. I'm just checking my notes so I don't lose complete track here. So I specifically want to talk today to women who have achieved specific positions within a system of authority, systems that are historically shaped by men or the patriarchal system, and how within those systems we begin enforcing the very beliefs that many marginalized women have experienced for generations. So it's largely like doctors, lawyers, the C-suite, in a company, CEOs, CFO, COO, whatever, the C-suite. But even down to like my level of professionals, like therapists or other kinds of educators, anyone who someone comes to you looking for support from a trusted source, but largely within a system that holds some kind of authority. Because I will say this, that as a therapist, I do hold some level of authority as I think about it, as I'm thinking as I do this. But, I'm a mandated reporter. So are teachers, doctors, nurses. If we see a problem that indicates there might be harm to a child or a dependent adult or elderly adult, we have to report that. We are mandated to report that. It's not optional. But that does give us some level of power and authority that is crucial that we listen to the information that's being presented to us. Because a lot of misinformation and big legal problems can come from jumping to conclusions because we didn't ask the right questions. Okay, I'm trying to stay on track so I don't go too tangential here, but we become the gatekeepers. We become the people who block services where services are needed. There are gatekeeping practices within the legal system with, abuse reports, whether that's on the police level, the legal system of like attorneys and judges and things, or the hired, psychology team, whoever. There's gatekeeping there. This is why women often don't report sexual harassment or abuse or assault, because help is being gatekept. It's being withheld because so often women are not believed. I know that if I were to go into a hospital, an ER, because I wanted to get a rape kit done, I would want that to be done by a woman. And because there would be an inherent sense of safety there. But even more crushing if I'm treated not like the victim of a crime, but someone who contributed to that problem, And that's not to say we don't. We do sometimes put ourselves in risky situations. It still doesn't justify getting raped. Sometimes we dress a little slutty. It still doesn't justify getting raped. Sometimes we drink. Doesn't justify getting raped. It just doesn't. So we've got women who are in these positions to really advocate and be the force that really gets us the help we need, and they shortchange us. They stop. And I know I'm jumping around to various different professions, and I'm going to narrow this down a little bit, but it's really important for any of you listening to look at what role do I hold professionally, and do I have the power and access to help and guidance and resources to other women who, because I'm too jaded in my position, or I'm too tired, or I got to get on to the next thing, or I'm overwhelmed, or this person is bugging me, or I don't like the way they talk or look. Am I allowing that to interfere with my ability to see them as a human in need, and they're coming to me because I am a trusted person that they have chosen to get the help from? So we need to look at that, me included. We need to connect with each other. We need to support each other. From the standpoint of the patriarchy, it's not a gender, it's a system, patriarchy. It's a system that gives privilege to men over women, but it's not just men in the system. We're all in the system. So when you hear the word patriarchy, you sometimes imagine that we're just simply talking to to men, and we're not. We're talking to each other. I'm sure you can think of plenty of women in positions like politicians, for instance, who vote against the well-being of women. And it's like, you're voting against yourself. You're creating policies against yourself, us. And I think that's the most tragic of it all. Because like men going along with the patriarchy, it sucks, but it makes sense because like it serves them, even if they don't see it that way. But it really doesn't serve us. And yet we're joining it. And I guess maybe there's a, if you can't beat them, join them mentality there. But we really need to look in the mirror and go, have I become part of the problem and not so much the solution? Patriarchy describes social structures in which men historically held disproportionate, institutionalized authority, and still do. And which traits and experiences associated with men have often been treated as the default. For instance, like female doctor or doctor, female athlete or athlete, you know, female president one day versus president. You know, it's just, there are certain positions, female cop, you know, female firefighter. There's just so many positions like that where it's like, you assume it's a male if you just say the position. So it takes extra indication to say woman, to say female. And women can internalize these values too. We can get into these positions and have internalized sense of I don't belong here. And there's a very real fear of being judged for being a woman in these positions because you do feel some element of you have to prove that though you were given this position, you have to prove to us that you can play ball, that you deserve to be here, that you're not going to be an emotional, pesky woman who makes it hard and makes us quickly regret for giving you this position, as if it's so freely been given, as if we didn't rise to the occasion in our schooling and training and education and whatever else to earn said position. But there is that internalized experience of, I have to prove that I belong here. And if that means I have to sell out my fellow ladies in the world, so be it. And I'm not even saying that's on a conscious level, but that really does come into how we interact with each other when it comes to these systems, these professional, typically male positions. A woman can absolutely believe that other women are too emotional. A woman can exaggerate pain. Mothers should naturally be able to handle motherhood, is a belief that many other women have. I've said before, I do a postpartum support group, and many of the moms come in really hard on themselves because it's not the easiest, most natural thing they've ever done, is have a baby and raise it, certainly through the newborn phase. Like, it doesn't feel so natural to me. It's harder than I thought it would be. I knew it would be hard, but not this hard. You know, my body isn't doing what it's supposed to. I don't feel bonded to my baby the way I'm supposed to, you know. We believe that for ourselves, and a lot of women who should know better because they're in the profession of supporting these women also believe that too. What's wrong with you? This is normal. Get over it. Everyone goes through this. We often believe too that a good wife should tolerate certain behaviors. We as women believe that, is what I'm saying. That there are certain behaviors from our partners that we should tolerate. Because, well, we signed up for this and we got to be a good wife, partner, whatever. So, marriage is hard or whatever. Deal with it. At least you're not single, There's also this belief too in the professional realm that we as women should suppress our emotional reactions and experiences in the workplace. Now, I'm not saying we fall apart blubbering on the floor, but most women I know don't fall apart blubbering in general. So let's stop talking in extremes. But if I have a client in front of me who's crying, I may cry too. I'm not going to completely fall apart, but my gosh, I'm going to have an authentic show of emotion. Let's be human with each other. Let's be human. There's a belief too that mothers asking for help are somehow failing their child. Asking for help as a mother is hard to do, especially if anyone's ever made you feel crazy or emotional or like you're exaggerating. I need a drink. It's really hard to ask for help. And if you've been shut down or minimized or told that you're overreacting, there's a good chance you won't ask again. We need to be asking for help. And we're not going to do it if even the women are telling us we're crazy. Not in those words, but essentially that's the communication. Go away. Figure it out. Take a pill, whatever, In the workplace, if a woman complains about mistreatment, she's seen as problematic, annoying, time-consuming, ineffective at her job. And she needs to be shut down, ignored, delayed in how you respond so that she maybe eventually gives up and just does what it is you want her to do. None of these beliefs require men to reinforce them. We don't need men going, make sure you put her in her place. Make sure you shut her up. Make sure she goes away. Once a belief becomes culturally embedded, anyone can carry it forward. And we do. And sometimes women learn that confronting their challenges rather than conforming to those expectations is going to be more harmful. So we shut up. We stop asking. And we survive differently. Not thriving, but we learn that the system is not on our side, and we give up and we shut down. And oftentimes it's coming from fellow women, because we all to some extent carry these beliefs. And if you think you don't have any of these, you're lying to yourself. And that's not to shame anyone. But we need to look in the mirror. Do I hold access to helping other women that I am actually withholding because I'm too busy, too tired, over it, doubtful of them? And then there's this other layer where I think we really need to acknowledge this idea that, well, I went through it, you do too. you know? Motherhood's hard. It was hard for me. It's hard for everyone. It's going to be hard for you. It should be hard for you. It's hard for all of us, you know? I gave birth without any kind of support or drugs or whatever. You can too. That was not coming from me, by the way. I used all the drugs and still got the baby to prove it. So I support you in whatever you got to do to get through that horrible process of childbirth, personally. I went back to work after 6 weeks. You can too. Okay, that one is me. I did go back to work right away because financially I was in a position where I couldn't afford to live on a partial salary for an extended period of time. So I had to go back to work. But by no means do I expect or think any other woman should have to do that. In fact, I hate that I had to do that. And then I was laid off from my job a month later. By a woman-owned company. All my bosses were women. I had a newborn baby. And they let me go. They let me go. And by the way, they're all not the one that owned the company, but all the bosses, the female boss, all had kids too. They were moms. But because I had to go back to work right away, due to my financial reasons, you better believe I'm not saying to other women, well, you can too. I mean, if they have to, I'm like, okay, we'll support you through this, you know, whatever. But by no means am I saying you should. And there's a big difference there. If you can get your maternity leave extended, do it. We shouldn't have to create a human, birth them into this world, be sleep deprived, and raising this new little creature that we don't have a clue what we're doing, and get right back to work. Get right back to work. I don't think that we should. So even though I had to go back to work, I am not saying that any other woman should have to do that. I hope all women, I want us all to be like, what was it, Australia or whatever, you get a year or something. Like, let's do that. Let's do that. Or even like saying, well, I was dismissed too. So, you know, it's normal. It's like, thanks for normalizing. However, let's do something different, you know? I know too that a lot of the times women who are in these positions of power within the system, the patriarchal system, experience their own abuse or poor treatment, mistreatment. We hear all the time about women in the military being sexually assaulted because, you know, that's how men show their power and let them know that you don't really belong here. And so we're going to abuse your body. And you're not going to be able to complain about it because nobody's going to believe you. And if you have a problem with it, you should probably not be in the military, right? You're not strong enough to be here. Well, the same, on some levels, that same thing happens in politics, you know? It's like if a woman advances, it's because she probably slept her way to the top. Or, you know, she had to do certain things to be heard and seen and taken seriously that were contrary to her value system. Being, you know, doctors, you know, talk about being sexually harassed in, you know, medical school coming up. There are so many ways that the patriarchal system supports making it really hard for women to enter these positions. And so when they do leap over those hurdles and fight their way through those masses of no's, they get there and they feel like, I can't lose it. I've got to be taken seriously. People need to know that I earned this. And a lot of times that comes with, so I'm going to sell out my fellow women. Those are those women. I'm a different kind of woman. And that is heartbreaking. Everyone should be able to survive. Everyone should be able to thrive. Everyone should be able to be heard and seen and listened to. And I know we don't have time for that. But where you are within the system, you need to do your part. And we all need to do our part to listen better, to support each other better. Things like, well, nobody helped me, so why should I help you? What if that was, nobody helped me and I remember what that felt like? And I refuse to let another woman experience that if I can prevent it. That's advocacy. And that's how cycles change. It's not because you're a woman, I'm going to give you this free pass. We're not asking for that. None of us are asking for a free pass because we're a woman. We are asking to have the system work the way it's supposed to work for our benefit, the way it typically works for men. And we're asking that the women who fought to get in those positions don't forget how they got there and where they come from, and advocate for those of us who are trying to do the same thing for ourselves. Make room for more of us, and again, not handing it to us, but make room for us to also rise up. Make room for all of us to be taken seriously. You were treated badly, or you weren't listened to, or you weren't taken seriously. That's all a reason to make sure it's not happening to others. It's not a good reason to then pass it on and continue it with other women. But I know that comes from fear. That comes from, I don't want to lose my position because I stopped what I was doing to help this woman. Men don't stop and do that. Sure they do. Boys clubs? Oh, absolutely they do. Men help each other out all the time. In the C-suite jobs, they do it on the fucking golf course. Sorry for my language. They do it on the golf course. They do it over drinks at meals. But they can go get those drinks at meals because they're not afraid of one of them raping the other one. There is a sense of safety that they have with each other. There should be a sense of safety that we have with each other as women. We need to advocate for each other. We need to show up for each other. The system is not going to bend to help us because too many people are benefiting from it. So we have to be the ones to pause and take that extra time and energy to help each other out. Speaking of healthcare, women have historically faced disparities in how pain and reproductive symptoms and chronic illnesses, autoimmune diseases, psychological symptoms are recognized and treated. Do you realize that many of the things that we know to be true about various mental illnesses come from studying men or even boys? And it's just assumed that it's the same for women? Like ADHD, for instance? And let's not even get started on how the practice of gynecology grew from essentially medically raping women of color, forcing inhumane practices on them so that, in the name of science. So the things that we go by aren't even tested for us when they're for us. And when they are for us, it's horribly done and misguided by, well, it was, men in the medical system. Men in the medical system. This is why we need a seat at the table. This is why we need women in these positions. This is why we need to help each other move up. This is why we need to help each other grow so we can become more voices of advocacy, because we are fighting ourselves. We have to grow, but we have to sustain it. We have to keep going. If we fight ourselves, we're going nowhere. So when a mother comes to you and says she's afraid of this or that, listen to her. When she tells you she has tried XYZ, I've seen this specialist, I've done this test, I've tried that thing, I've Googled that, I've asked ChatGPT, I've asked my friends, I've asked my midwife. Like, a lot of the times, women are trying to advocate for themselves because honestly, so few people will do it for us. So when a woman comes to you and says, I've done all this, don't disregard it and say, oh, try this. Go, wow, you have really tried a lot of things. I'm impressed with how hard you've worked for your child or for yourself. And I was going to suggest something like this, but to hear that you've already tried that, wow, okay, we need to find a new solution. It's okay to say you don't know, but it does mean there's extra work there for you to help them figure out the next step. But that's why they're coming to you. And I'm saying this to doctors, nurses, social workers, therapists, behaviorists, whatever. When a woman comes to you, she's probably put in a fair amount of thinking and work, but she's hit a dead end, and so now she's asking for help. And she chose you. Be the help. Be the change in her life. Be different. If a woman says there's something wrong with her body, let's not tell her that maybe she's just stressed. She probably is stressed. But let's not tell her that's what she's experiencing, that it's just stress. Most of us are stressed. Tell her to lose weight. Well, if you weren't so overweight, you've gained this weight after having your baby, or now that you've hit this age, your metabolism's slowing down, you should really do something about that. Oh, but don't do a GLP-1 though, because, well, that's cheating. Or it's just hormones. It might be hormones. And if it is hormones, let's investigate what we can do about that rather than just saying it's just hormones. Because our hormones are so misunderstood. I've talked before in a previous episode about perimenopause and menopause, and how me, as somebody who's in that stage of my life, I didn't even know that I was there. And I was actually told by a female nurse practitioner that I'm not in it, and then turns out I am, So it's like, we've got to do the work, ladies. We've got to take care of each other. I shared in my last video, it takes a village. Let's be each other's village. Let's show up for each other. Or being told it's just anxiety. It might be anxiety. A lot of times it's anxiety because we're not getting the answers we need, and we're scared of where that's going to go. We're scared that if I go to the doctor and I complain of this, they're probably going to tell me I'm crazy. And I have anxiety about that. Nobody's going to listen to me. I'm going to get stuck in the endless loop of, you need a referral for that, or you need a specialist for that, or you have to wait 6 weeks to be seen, or whatever, or you have to do these XYZ tasks before you can, whatever. That's anxiety provoking. And we shut down. We're like, I don't want to deal with it. The system is the problem. And when we get into the system, we become the problem, unfortunately, if we don't catch ourselves. We need to look at ourselves. A female physician can carry implicit bias. A female nurse can minimize another woman's pain. A female therapist can misunderstand trauma. A female attorney can dismiss someone's experience of harassment. Women are human beings, and we are all shaped by the same culture. Being a woman does not automatically make someone an advocate for women. So though we tend to feel more comfortable with women in professional settings, and I get why we do, because there's hope there, it's not a guarantee. So as a therapist working in mental health, I see a lot of this, navigating through insurance systems and providers and doctors, psychiatrists, whatever. And this conversation becomes particularly important to me. A woman can have a healthy baby and still be suffering tremendously from perinatal or postpartum mental illness. It has nothing to do with the baby a lot of the times. She can love her baby desperately and still have postpartum depression. She can love her baby and not feel connected to her baby. She can be grateful for motherhood, but still have a lot of anxiety. She can have medically a successful delivery and still feel that the birth of her child was traumatic. She can appear functional while barely holding herself together. And one of the most invalidating things we can say is, well, your baby is healthy, so that's good. At least you got a healthy baby. Because what that says is your suffering doesn't matter because the outcome that everyone cares about is actually the baby, and the baby's okay. But I'll tell you what, that baby is not okay if mom is not okay. If mom is not okay, that baby is not or will not be okay. And of course, baby's well-being matters, but so does the mom's. She is a human being who went through pregnancy, childbirth, enormous hormonal swings, sleep deprivation, physical recovery, whether it was a vaginal birth or a cesarean, identity transformation, which we've talked about on this channel, like who the hell am I now? Where have I gone? And even trauma, depending on how the pregnancy or the birth or the postpartum period have gone. There's so many opportunities for traumatic things to happen in the creating of a child. Even the fertility journey for many of us on the front end can be traumatic. So when a mother says something isn't right, we need to be curious before we get dismissive. And this is true for non-mothers too. I know so many women who, I have autoimmune diseases. With autoimmune, it can be really hard because they take on so many different symptoms and they look so different from person to person. And it's really hard to get these diagnosed properly. And it takes a doctor that listens. And as I mentioned ADHD earlier, like I have clients who it's like, how have you not been diagnosed with ADHD? It's so obvious that you have it. And it's like, well, because they're comparing me to an 8-year-old boy. And my symptoms don't look like that. you know? So I want to make some important distinctions here. Anxiety can absolutely produce physical symptoms. That's real. And sometimes anxiety really is part of the clinical picture. But anxiety and physical illness are not mutually exclusive. A woman can have anxiety and a medical condition. She can have trauma and an autoimmune disorder. She can have postpartum anxiety and a postpartum medical complication. She can have depression and chronic pain. Psychological explanations should not automatically become reasons to stop investigating those physical symptoms. And mental health professionals need to remember this too. Therapists are not physicians, not a doctor. But if a client reports a concerning physical symptom, our role isn't to confidently declare it's anxiety. Our role includes recognizing the limits of our scope of practice and encouraging appropriate medical evaluation when indicated. Women deserve both psychological and appropriate medical care. We are both. We are physical beings and we are mental, emotional beings. Not to mention spiritual beings, but that's separate. Our bodies and our minds need to be treated. And this conversation extends far beyond healthcare even. Think about women who occupy positions previous generations fought incredibly hard to access. So there's doctors and nurses and therapists and attorneys and judges and executives and professors and administrators and HR professionals and politicians and supervisors. There's so many positions that we broke many a glass ceiling to get into. And I think it's important. It's an important question for women in those positions. Now that you have a seat at the table, what are you going to do with it? Are you making it safer for the women coming behind you? Are you listening? Are you questioning assumptions and biases? Are you advocating when women's voices are not being heard? Are you challenging systems that disproportionately burden women? Or have you learned that maintaining your position requires you to protect the system? Because representation matters. But representation alone doesn't guarantee change. Having a woman in power is not the same thing as having a woman in power who is using that power to advocate for other women. There are many uncomfortable parts to the next part of this. I want to go into talking about misogyny. Many of us have absorbed sexist beliefs without even realizing it. And maybe you've heard yourself even say some of these things. I just get along better with men. Women are too dramatic. I don't trust women. Women are too emotional. I'm not like other girls. And sometimes underneath that is a lifetime of learning that proximity to masculinity earns social credibility. We distance ourselves from femininity because femininity has historically been treated as weak, irrational, superficial, or overly emotional. But when women learn to gain credibility by separating themselves from other women, something really painful happens. Instead of challenging the patriarchy, we compete for a better position inside of it. And this is where women begin policing other women and stepping on each other. This shows up in how mothers should parent, how women should age, what women should wear, how ambitious women should be, how sexual women should be, how emotional women are allowed to be, how victims should behave, how quickly women should recover from childbirth, and how much pain women should tolerate. And at some point we have to ask, whose rules are we enforcing? So now, supporting women does not mean blindly agreeing to every woman, as I said at the top of this video. Women are not a monolith. Women can be wrong. Women can behave badly. Women can hurt other people. Women can disagree profoundly. Female solidarity does not require abandoning critical thinking. It means that a woman's gender should not make us less likely to believe her, less curious about her experience, or more willing to dismiss her suffering. Advocacy can include accountability. In fact, healthy relationships between women should include accountability. We should hold each other up, but we should also hold the mirror in front of ourselves and go, look at this, girl. Look at yourself. Look at what you're doing. Look at what you're saying. Does this seem right to you? Check each other. But accountability is very different from contempt. Then from the perspective of the divine feminine, as always, I think one of the deepest wounds women carry is disconnection from each other. I talked last week about that village. This is part of being each other's village, fighting for and with each other. For generations, women have been compared. Who's prettier? Who's younger? Who's thinner? Who's a better mother? Who's a better wife? Who gets chosen? Who's got a better home, a better career? Who's aged better? Who bounced back after pregnancy faster or better or whatever? Who can do everything without asking for help? Competition keeps us looking sideways at one another instead of asking why we're exhausted trying to meet the impossible standards in the first place. There's a tremendous power in women deciding that your success does not threaten mine. Your pain does not diminish mine. Your voice does not silence mine. Your need for help does not make you weak. I do not have to understand your experience completely in order to take you seriously. That is sisterhood. And sisterhood doesn't require us to be identical. It requires us to recognize one another's humanity. So how do we change this? First, we believe women enough to investigate. Second, we get curious instead of immediately correcting. Third, we check our own bias. Fourth, we advocate when we have the power to. Fifth, stop treating other women's suffering as a competition. Listen when other women tell you that something isn't right. So I want to leave you with this. Think about a time in your life when you desperately needed another woman to believe you. Maybe you were a little girl or a teenager. Maybe it was like when you were giving birth or pregnant, trying to get pregnant, or you were sitting in a doctor's office, or you're reporting sexual harassment at work, or maybe you were leaving an abusive relationship, struggling after having kids, or simply saying something is wrong and I need help. Now imagine that what you would have changed if another woman had looked at you and said, I hear you. I believe that you're hurting. Let's figure this out. You don't have to convince me that your suffering matters, because it does. We cannot dismantle systems that harm women while producing those same systems in our relationships with one another. And perhaps one of the most powerful forms of feminine resistance is actually very simple. Women listening to women, women protecting women, women believing women, women opening doors for women, women advocating for women when those women aren't in the room, and women refusing to take the next generation's suffering refusing to make the next generation suffer simply because previous generations had to. Be the woman you once needed. Because imagine what could happen if instead of women versus women, it became women for women. This was a long one today, and I hope it resonated with you as a woman. I think it should, because it should resonate with all of us, both within ourselves and with the women in our lives, the professionals in our lives. And if you've ever felt dismissed by another woman when you expected her to understand, then you know how important it is that we advocate for each other. So show up for women the way others maybe haven't for you. Show up for ourselves the way others have not for us in the past. If you enjoyed this conversation, if this topic did resonate with you, please leave some comments below. Let me know what you're thinking. Subscribe to my channel. And if I didn't say it in the beginning, because I don't think I did, this is Gifts of Intuition. I'm Melissa. Welcome back. I got into it real hot today. But anyway, as always, we explore mental health, the divine feminine, and womanhood. And I'm here to support you, and as always, be part of your village. And trust your intuition, support each other, and be curious. All right, until next time, take care.